I stood on the playground of Beijing No. 1 High School, surrounded by 10,000 students. We were all staring up at the high stage where a short, chubby kid with a face full of acne was screaming his lungs out. He held his right hand high, his face turning a deep shade of purple from the effort. "I will definitely get into the St. Martial Warrior Academy," he roared. "I will definitely get into the St. Martial Warrior Academy." I watched him from the crowd and sighed. I never expected that even in this world, a world where reality had turned into a data-driven game, we'd still have to deal with these cringy 100-day oath rallies. I was a traveler. 3 years ago, I woke up in this world that looked almost exactly like Earth, but with one massive difference. The game had arrived. Everyone was digitized. Everyone had stats. This was the era of class awakening. In the wild, monsters, dungeons, and secret realms appeared out of nowhere. Everyone had an attribute panel, and, at 18, we all underwent a class awakening to determine our future. School still existed, but instead of math and literature, we studied monster encyclopedias and skill breakdowns. The college entrance exam was still the most important event of our lives. It decided if you became an elite at a top academy, a commoner working a desk job, or a desperate wilderness hunter. Since we were 100 days out from the exam, the school organized this rally. Each class sent a representative to shout their goals. To the other kids, it was inspiring. To me, a man living his second life, it was so awkward I wanted to crawl into a hole. Suddenly, a notification pinged in my mind. "Ding, you have a new mission. Please check." My golden finger was acting up again. I raised an eyebrow and opened my mental task panel. Transparent words only I could see floated in the air. Available tasks. 1. Interrupt the student on stage and shout, "You'll never make it." Reward, iron broom, a common item made of solid iron. Not a weapon, but using it might give you massive arms or chronic shoulder pain. 2. Stay silent and applaud to encourage your classmate. Reward, +1 charm. Another set of pointless rewards. I felt a bit bored. Ever since I arrived in this world, this task panel would randomly trigger, giving me 2 or 3 choices. The tasks weren't hard, and the rewards ranged from stat points to cash, gear, or useless junk like iron brooms. Because of this system, I had already gained nearly 50 points in charm. It had turned me into the most famous school grass in Beijing City. The occasional cash rewards also meant that even as an orphan, I lived a pretty comfortable life. I didn't even have to think about it. I picked option 2. It wasn't that I wanted to be more handsome. I just didn't want to crush the poor kid's dreams. As the chubby boy finished his oath, I joined the crowd in clapping. The mission completed instantly, and I felt that familiar surge as my charm increased by 1. The boy bowed, panting, and headed down to let the next representative up. Old Lu, look. A tall, burly guy who looked like a bear nudged me. This was Go Sheng, one of my best friends, and a level 13 shield warrior. He was vibrating with excitement as he pulled on my sleeve. My goddess, Xiaohe, is up next. She's not from a rich family, but she's the undisputed civilian goddess of our school. She always smiles at everyone, and her eyes, man, they look like they're talking to you. My heart melts every time I see her. Go Sheng glanced at me, then paused. He squinted suspiciously. Old Lu, why do I feel like you got even more handsome in the last 30 seconds? I kept a straight face. I get more handsome every day? It's a burden, really. Get lost, Go Sheng muttered, though he nodded in agreement. You're so annoying. He wasn't wrong. Since my freshman year, I'd gone from being just a good-looking guy to someone with a level of charisma that was almost supernatural. Girls couldn't help but stare. Go Sheng had no idea it was all thanks to my system. A girl in a clean school uniform stepped onto the stage. She didn't wear makeup and had her hair in a simple high ponytail. She wasn't a legendary beauty, but she had that pure, first love vibe that made 80% of high school boys lose their minds. Look, Old Lu, that's her. Go Sheng's eyes turned into hearts. I looked at her, but didn't feel much. My desk was already overflowing with love letters from girls prettier than Xiaohe. I just wanted this rally to end so I could get back to training for the exams. The crowd went wild the moment she appeared. The simps in the audience clapped until their hands were red. But Xiaohe looked distracted. She scanned the crowd, her eyes searching for someone. When her gaze finally landed on me, her face lit up. "Hello, everyone," she said into the microphone, her eyes locked onto mine. "I am Chio-hee, the representative for Class 18. I'm honored to be here to share my oath for the 100-day rally. What I want to say is..." She paused. Her face turned bright red. The boys in the crowd were swooning at the sight. She took a deep breath, clenched her fists, and shouted with everything she had. "Lin Yuan, I like you. Will you be my boyfriend?" Silence. The entire playground went dead quiet for a heartbeat before an explosion of noise nearly took the roof off the school. The civilian goddess had just confessed her love in front of 10,000 people. "Chio-hee, no? You've lost your mind," one guy screamed. "Why him? Is it because I'm not good enough?" Another wailed. But others were more realistic. "Dude, it's Lin Yuan. He's the top heartthrob of the school. They're a perfect match." As the chaos erupted, a new notification flashed in my eyes. The real story was just beginning. "Who do you think you are, rejecting her?" one guy screamed. "Chio-hee, how could you try to steal my man?" a girl yelled from the other side. "Lin Yuan is mine. Don't even dream about it." The playground was a mess. It wasn't just Chio-hee's army of followers losing their minds. The girls who had secret crushes on me were joining the fray too. The school leaders on the podium looked like they wanted to disappear. Their faces were turning a deep, angry shade of purple. I stood there stunned. I knew I was popular, but I didn't expect Chio-hee to pull a stunt this insane. Beside me, Go Shung's mouth was hanging open wide enough to swallow an egg. He looked at me with watery eyes, looking like his entire world had collapsed. "Old Lin," he whimpered. "I was still trying to figure out how to accidentally bump into my goddess, and you've already gone and raided the base. Tell me the truth. When did you two start seeing each other?" Seeing each other? I racked my brain, trying to find any memory of her. I barely know who she is. The only time we spoke was when she tried to give me a love letter after school. I turned her down. "You rejected my goddess?" Go Shung looked even more devastated. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Too many girls send me letters," I said honestly. "I can't keep track of them all. How was I supposed to know she was your goddess?" Go Shung went silent. He looked up at the stage where Chio-hee was waiting, her eyes full of hope as she stared at me. He took a deep breath, looking like a martyr. "She's waiting for your answer," he whispered. Just say yes." I glanced at him, annoyed. Why would I do that? "Because she confessed in front of everyone," he cried, a single tear rolling down his cheek. "If you say no, she'll lose face. If she starts crying, my heart will break into a million pieces." I stared at him for a long time. "I'm not calling you Goshing anymore. From now on, your name is Simp King." "Simp King? What's that?" He looked confused through his tears. I didn't bother explaining. I planned to just stay quiet until she got tired of waiting and went away. Confessing in front of the school leaders isn't romantic. It's a death wish. She might want a disciplinary mark on her record, but I certainly didn't. Staying invisible was the best move. Suddenly, a familiar chime rang in my head. Asterisk ding. New task available. Please check. Asterisk. Another one? I opened the task panel in my mind. Two options appeared. Asterisk option 1. Accept Chio-hee's confession. Reward. 1 bottle of everlasting stamina pill. Asterisk. Asterisk option 2. Reject Chio-hee's confession. Reward. Hidden job class. Sword Immortal. Asterisk. I stared at the screen. A hidden class? In this world, your class is everything. Most people end up with life classes, like farming or tailoring. Only about 25% get combat classes, and even fewer get support roles. But a hidden class? That was a 1 in 1,000 chance. They were vastly more powerful and had insane potential. If I got this, top universities would be begging me to join before I even took the exams. I was currently just a basic swordsman. It was okay, but Sword Immortal sounded on a completely different level. "Sorry, stamina pill," I whispered to myself. "I'm sure you're great, but I need that class." I mentally clicked option 2. The first task faded away. On stage, Chio-hee was getting desperate. The school leaders were walking toward her, and I still hadn't said a word. She grabbed the mic again. "Lin Yuan, it took so much courage to stand here. I'm doing this because I really, truly like you. Please, give me an answer." The crowd went silent. Every eye in the school was on me. I cleared my throat. My voice wasn't loud, but in the silence, it carried across the entire field. I'm sorry. I refuse. I paused for effect. Women only slowed down the speed of my blade. Silence again. Then, the crowd exploded. He actually did it. He rejected the goddess. What a savage. He didn't even give her a chance to save face. Wait, what was that reason? Women slowed down his blade? That is the most legendary flex I've ever heard. While the crowd buzzed with shock and relief, a notification flashed. Asterisk ding. Task complete. Your class has been changed to Sword Immortal, asterisk. A sudden surge of power rushed through my veins. It felt like a river of cold energy was flowing through my limbs. Deep in my chest, I heard a faint, melodic hum, the sound of a spirit sword vibrating. No one else could hear it, but I felt my entire body transforming. I ignored the chaos and opened my new attribute panel. Name, Lin Yuan. Level, 14. Class, Sword Immortal, Unique Hidden Class. Strength, 34 Agility, 34 Spirit, 22 Endurance, 29. My stats hadn't changed much yet, but they were already double that of a normal student thanks to my previous tasks. I had always been the strongest in my class, but as a basic swordsman, I lacked the high-tier skills of the school's elite. Now, things were different. My old skills, sword mastery and heavy strike, were gone. In their place were 3 new ones. Sword Heart. Passive increases damage by 50% when using sword-type weapons. Asterisk Sword Kinesis. Active allows you to control your sword remotely. Increases attack speed by 50% and damage by 20%. Asterisk Sunset Slash. Active a high-power AoE strike that can cut down enemy projectiles. Cannot be used during Sword Kinesis. Asterisk. My old sword mastery only gave me a 5% boost at level 1. This new passive gave me 50%. I looked at the screen, stunned. My life as a normal student was officially over. The power gap between my old class and the Sword Immortal was 10 times over. It was clear just how much stronger a hidden class really was. My new skill, Sword Kinesis, wasn't just about looking cool. Controlling the sword remotely boosted my attack speed by 50% and my damage by 20%. It was a massive jump in my combat potential. Then there was Sunset Slash. I couldn't use it while my sword was flying around, but it was a powerful area of effect skill. It worked for both offense and defense, capable of cutting down enemy projectiles to keep me safe. To sum it up, the Sword Immortal class had 2 main traits. It was incredibly strong, and it was incredibly stylish. The class name, the skills, everything felt like it was made for someone like me. I like to think coolness was my defining life philosophy. I was busy feeling ecstatic about my new powers. I didn't even notice that Xiaohe's pretty face was now a mask of pure grievance. She hadn't expected me to reject her so coldly. Her lips trembled and her eyes stayed low. She looked like she was about to burst into tears. Seeing her like that, her group of simps in the crowd started getting restless. They began shouting, accusing me of going too far and embarrassing her in front of everyone. Just as the crowd was about to turn into a mob, the school leaders on the stage finally snapped. A middle-aged man in a formal suit grabbed the microphone. "What is this nonsense?" he roared. "The 100-day oath ceremony is a serious event, not a stage for this farce." The crowd went dead silent. The man speaking was Cui Shan, the director of Grade 12. He was famous for being strict and having zero tolerance for trouble. Since this happened under his watch with the school board watching, he was clearly fuming. He walked down from the stage, glaring first at Xiaohe and then at me. "Both of you, get to my office immediately," he barked. "Teacher Wang, continue the ceremony. Keep things in order." Cui Shan turned and marched toward the office building. Every step he took made his heavy armor clank with a harsh, metallic sound. He was genuinely angry. I felt a wave of helplessness wash over me. Xiaohe was the one who dragged me into this mess. Why was I getting punished too? That girl was nothing but trouble. I had no choice but to follow him. Inside the office, the lecture began. "There are only 100 days left until the college entrance exam," Cui Shan shouted. He sat behind his desk like a general on a battlefield. "This ceremony is supposed to motivate students for the final push. Instead, you two are distracting everyone. If the other students are focused on your drama, who's going to focus on leveling up?" He went on for 2 hours. I let his words go in one ear and out the other. My mind was busy analyzing my new class. I probably had a stupid grin on my face the whole time. Beside me, Chiohee was sobbing quietly. I wasn't sure if she was crying because I rejected her or because of the scolding, but I didn't care. Neither did Chui-shan. I noticed Chui-shan stop for a drink of water and decided to speak up. The sound of Chiohee's whimpering was starting to give me a headache. "Director Chui," I said. "This doesn't really have much to do with me, does it?" I didn't say a word. Chiohee confessed to me in public, and I turned her down immediately. I don't think I should be stuck here being lectured for hours. "Don't talk back," Chui-shan snapped, cutting me off. "You think you're innocent? You were part of the disturbance. Both of you are equally responsible." I cursed him out in my head. I wanted to say more, but I remembered he was a level 54 heavy knight. I kept my mouth shut. "I'm sorry, Lin Yuan," Chiohee whispered beside me. "I didn't mean to get you involved. If you want, I'll take the punishment for you." She sounded sincere, but it only made me more annoyed. She was a good girl, sure, but she clearly didn't have a brain. Her words backfired instantly. Chui-shan, who might have let us off with a written apology, turned red with rage. "Oh, so you're playing the tragic lovers now," he sneered. "You want to take his punishment? Fine. I'll give you both something to remember. You're both going to the death trial. Let's see if a taste of death can clear all that romance out of your heads so you can focus on your exams." The color drained from my face. Chiohee looked just as terrified. The death trial was an artificial dungeon that our school had bought for a high price 6 years ago. It was meant to be a training ground for students to gain experience and combat skills. The benefit was that you didn't actually die. If your health hit 0, you were just teleported out. However, there was a catch. You still felt everything. You experienced the full, agonizing sensation of dying. There were only 2 ways out: clear the dungeon or die trying. Clearing it was a joke. The death trial had 10 levels. The final boss was a level 25 bronze boss. The average high school senior was only level 15. It was a solo dungeon, and in the 6 years the school had owned it, the best student, a powerful hidden class user, only made it to the 8th level. He never even saw the boss. Basically, entering the death trial meant you were guaranteed to die at least once. For a high schooler, that kind of trauma was unbearable. Nobody volunteered for it. Why suffer when you could just go kill level 10 mobs in the wild? It had become the school's ultimate punishment. I had heard stories of students coming out of that place with permanent psychological scars. And now, thanks to Chiohee, I was next. I heard it took students a full week to recover from the trauma of this place. This was a brutal punishment, no matter how you looked at it. Right then, a notification pinged in my mind. Asterisk ding. You have new tasks available. Please check. Asterisk. Again? The system was being incredibly active today. I opened the task panel discreetly and scanned the options. Task 1. Accept the punishment gracefully. Reward: 1 weapon blind box. Special item: contains a random grade weapon. Task 2. Curse out the grade director, Chui-shan. Tell him he's insane. This has nothing to do with you. And ask why the hell he's punishing you before storming out. Reward: 1 equipment blind box. Special item: contains a random grade piece of armor. Both rewards were tempting. I needed gear, and I needed a weapon. However, I looked at Chui-shan's face and realized that if I chose task 2, he'd probably swat me like a fly before I even reached the door. Besides, I was a sword immortal now. Using such vulgar language would really ruin my vibe. I mentally selected task 1. On the outside, I stayed perfectly calm. I looked Chui-shan in the eye and spoke clearly. "Director Chui, I accept the punishment. I'll take the death trial." My lack of hesitation caught him off guard. He was the type of man who softened when people stopped resisting. His anger visibly ebbed, and his voice lost its sharp edge. "Fine," he said, nodding. "Both of you, follow me to the teleportation hall." He stood up and added a final warning. "If this happens again, the punishment won't be as simple as a trial." He led the way out of the office. As I followed, I felt a weight in my inventory. A small, ancient-looking wooden box about the size of my fist had appeared. I didn't open it yet. With Chiohee and Chui-shan right there, I didn't want to draw attention. I'd wait until I was inside the dungeon to see if my luck was actually any good. Chiohee looked like he was walking to the gallows. He didn't want to go, but since I had agreed so readily, he had no choice but to drag his feet behind us. We reached the school's teleportation hall quickly. It was a massive space with 4 teleportation arrays and 1 glowing dungeon entrance. The arrays led to various leveling zones outside the city, ranging from level 1 to level 20. Students usually paid points to use them, but the dungeon entrance in the center was the one we were heading for, the man-made death trial. A teacher on duty stood up as we approached. Chui Shan waved him off and told him to prep the resources for 2 solo runs. The teacher hurried into a side room and returned with a stack of materials, placing them onto the formation. The entrance flared to life, turning into a swirling portal of deep blue light. "Go on," Chui Shan said, his tone almost encouraging now. "It's a punishment, but the school spends resources every time this portal opens. Don't waste it. Treat it as a real training exercise. Try to clear as many stages as possible and get some experience." I nodded and stepped forward. Suddenly, I heard a small, trembling voice beside me. I don't want to go in. I'm scared." He was looking at me, his eyes watery and pathetic. "Lu Sheng, can you help me?" If any of the school's simps had seen him like this, they would have probably beaten their chests and offered to take the punishment for him twice. They would have begged the director to let their goddess go free. Fortunately, I was too handsome to care about drama, and I was completely heartless when it came to his tea-drinking act. I looked at him and smiled. "Don't be afraid. I can help you." Chiohe's eyes lit up. "Really? Yeah, just close your eyes." He didn't know why I wanted him to close his eyes, but he did it anyway, looking expectant. While Chui Shan watched with a look of pure bewilderment, I stepped behind Chiohe and planted my hand firmly on the small of his back. "Off you go." With a sharp shove, I launched him forward. Chiohe let out a startled shriek as he tumbled headfirst into the blue portal. I dusted off my hands. I didn't use my foot because a sword immortal should have some standards. Behind me, Chui Shan looked like he was reconsidering everything he knew about teenage romance. He probably realized right then that I was the last person on Earth at risk of falling in love. I stepped into the portal and felt a familiar tearing sensation as the world shifted. The death trial was simple. Since it was man-made, there was no flavor text or scenery. It was just a massive, square stone arena, 1,000 meters by 1,000 meters. The edges were shrouded in a thick, gray fog. The only features were 4 stone pillars in the corners, about 3 meters high, perfect for an archer to hide on. My task panel updated immediately. Death trial. Survive and defeat all incoming beasts. Current beast count, 0. Next wave arrives in 4:57. The dungeon gave you 5 minutes to prep. It was a humane touch, allowing students to drink potions or cast buffs. I used the time to pull the wooden box from my inventory. "Open the weapon blind box," I whispered. The box began to break apart in my hands. A blinding light erupted from the cracks. Inside the glow, I saw the silhouettes of countless weapons flickering past: swords, spears, staves. They flashed with different colors, representing their grades: white, blue, purple, gold, red, epic, legendary, and mythic. The school uniform I was wearing was white grade, basically trash that gave a measly 5 points of defense. In this world, a high-grade weapon could let you slaughter monsters way above your level like you were drinking water. I held my breath. I needed something big. The light grew so intense I had to squint, my heart hammering against my ribs. Then, the flickering stopped. The blinding light finally began to fade. I blinked, my eyes watering, and looked down at my hands. The weapon box was gone. In its place rested a long sword that looked like it had been pulled straight from a myth. It was a deep, celestial blue. The blade was covered in flowing water patterns that shimmered like stars in a night sky. A faint, ethereal blue mist rolled off the steel, giving it an otherworldly glow. I stared at it, mesmerized. It was beautiful. But there was one small problem. The glow wasn't the rainbow color of a mythic item. It was gold. Don't get me wrong, gold grade was incredible. I'd never even heard of a teacher at number 1 high school owning a gold weapon, and most of them were level 40 or 50. Even the experts who had completed their 2nd or 3rd job advancements usually settled for purple gear. My throat felt dry. I took a deep breath and pulled up the item's stats. Name, Azure. Grade, gold. Required level, 15. Required class, Sword Immortal. Attack, plus 460. Strength, plus 56. Agility, plus 61. Spirit, plus 79. Bonus 1. Attacks slow enemies by 35% for 3 seconds. Bonus 2. Heals the user for 20% of damage dealt. Bonus 3. Enhances the skill 1 Jian Pinglan. Increases range to 30 meters. I stared at the screen, my mind blank. I wasn't exactly a top student in my cultural classes, so the only word I could find to describe this was insane. The stats were a joke. It was perfectly tailored for a sword immortal. High attack, a massive boost to 3 main attributes, and lifesteal? That alone was game-changing. But the third bonus was the real kicker. It turned a close-range area of effect skill into a long-range nuke. With this sword and my hidden class, the college entrance exams in 100 days weren't just a sure thing anymore. I was confident I could take the top spot in the entire southern province. There was just one catch. I was level 14. I needed one more level to actually equip it. I sighed, staring at the sword one last time before reluctantly putting it back into my inventory. I pulled out my current weapon instead, the Wolf Fong Blade. It was a blue-grade sword I'd spent all my savings on. It required level 10 and gave 86 attack points. A few days ago, I thought it was a masterpiece. Now, looking at it after seeing Azure, it felt like a piece of junk. The stats weren't even a fifth of what the gold sword offered. Still, it was all I had for now. I gripped the hilt, feeling the cold weight of the metal. I had to use this to get through the trial. The 5-minute timer hit 0. Immediately, 3 summoning circles erupted on the stone floor 20 meters in front of me. I heard a sickening sound, the dry, rhythmic grinding of bone on bone. 3 skeletal figures stepped out of the light. Their hollow eye sockets locked onto me. I checked their stats. Name, Bone Shambler, common. Level, 10. Attributes, undead/dark. Skills, Bone Shield, 25% chance to block and reduce damage, heavy strike. I wasn't surprised to see undead. Ever since the game invaded our world, the Dark Lands had been eating away at our borders. Entire small countries had already fallen, their citizens turned into undead slaves. These Bone Shamblers were the bottom of the barrel. Their stats were barely 10 across the board, weaker than an average level 10 combat student. Even before I became a sword immortal, I could have handled 3 of these. Now, this was just an appetizer. The skeletons charged. To me, they looked like they were moving in slow motion. Their movements were clumsy, their forms full of openings. I stepped forward, my movement fluid. I swung the Wolf Fong Blade in a casual arc. Crack! The first skeleton shattered like a pile of toy blocks. It didn't even put up a fight. It just collapsed into a heap of dried dust. I paused for a second, surprised. I knew I was strong, but a one-hit kill felt a bit extreme. The second skeleton reached me, swinging its rusted weapon. I didn't think. I just raised my sword and slashed again. This time, the creature reacted. It jerked its bone shield up, trying to intercept my blade. But it didn't matter. I brought the Wolf Fong Blade down in a heavy arc. The skeleton raised its bone shield, triggering its block skill, but it didn't matter. My blade tore through the shield like it was made of wet paper and shattered the monster into white dust. Another one-hit kill. I had just dealt massive damage despite the creature's 50% damage reduction. I stood there for a second, staring at my hands. I realized I didn't even have a clear grasp of my own strength yet. To put it simply, I was overpowered beyond belief. I swung one more time, easily taking out the third and final skeleton. As the dust settled, I finally understood why I was hitting so hard. One of my passive sword immortal skills, Sword Heart, granted me a 50% damage boost whenever I used a sword-type weapon. Against level 10 mobs, I was basically a god. I let out a small smile. A unique hidden class really was something else. But I knew this wasn't even the full extent of my potential. I wanted to see exactly how far this sword immortal class could go. I didn't have much time to rest. The countdown for the second wave was only 60 seconds. As soon as the timer hit 0, 10 summoning circles glowed on the floor. 10 bone shamblers crawled out of the light. They were trying to overwhelm me with numbers since their quality was so poor. It didn't work. I didn't feel a hint of pressure. I didn't even bother moving toward them this time. Getting up close and personal was what a standard swordsman did. I was a sword immortal. I had better ways to fight. Imperial sword technique, I whispered. I tossed the wolf fang blade into the air. Instead of falling, the sword defied every law of physics and hovered steadily in front of me. Go, I commanded, pointing my finger at the approaching pack. The blade snapped toward the skeletons, letting out a sharp whistle as it tore through the air. Crack, crack, crack. 3 skeletons exploded instantly. In this flying sword mode, my damage increased by another 20%. Their defense was non-existent to me now. My attack speed was also 50% higher. Controlling the sword with my mind felt even more fluid than holding it in my hand. In the time it would have taken me to swing twice manually, my flying blade could strike 3 times. It moved like a streak of silver light, weaving through the remaining monsters and leaving nothing but afterimages behind. Every time a shadow touched a skeleton, it shattered. It didn't matter if they blocked or not. The sensation was incredible. It was almost addictive. My only regret was that these monsters were too weak. Even with 10 of them, the fight was over in seconds. I hadn't moved a single inch from my starting position. As the last bone fragment hit the ground, I hooked my fingers. The wolf fang blade trailed a faint white current of air as it flew back, circling around my body like it was alive. The third wave came even faster. Only 30 seconds later, 10 more circles lit up. I waited calmly. When the first monster tried to step out, I pointed my finger. The sword shot out and killed it before it could even finish spawning. Meanwhile, back in the teleportation hall, Chui Shan hadn't left. He was standing in front of the control panel for the death trial. He couldn't see the actual fight, but he could see the data, the back end of the dungeon. He pulled up the map for a student named Xiaohe first. On the screen, a dim green dot representing the student was being chased by 7 bright red dots. Xiaohe was already injured and struggling just to survive the second wave. Chui Shan shook his head. He figured a student like that would fail by the third wave and end up as a nobody. Then, he remembered me. He knew I was a top student, but he still thought I was just a regular swordsman. He figured my high base stats might carry me to the 6th wave, but that would be my limit. The 6th wave featured 24 heavy plate skeletons. They were slow, but they hit like trucks. For a solo swordsman, being surrounded by 24 of them was a death sentence. Even some of the elite hidden class students from previous years had been killed instantly in that wave. Chui Shan pulled up my display, expecting to see me struggling. He froze. His eyes widened in pure shock. I was already on the 6th wave. He checked the timer, convinced there was a glitch. I had cleared the previous wave so fast that my average time per wave was less than 2 minutes. He watched the screen, his jaw dropping as 24 red dots appeared. Then, like a string of firecrackers going off, they started blinking out one by one. In less than 2 minutes, all 24 monsters were gone. But the thing that terrified him the most? My green dot hadn't moved once. I had wiped out the entire wave without taking a single step. Chui Shan stared at the monitor, his head spinning. 24 heavy plate skeletons were supposed to be a nightmare for any melee class, but I had wiped them out without breaking a sweat. He couldn't wrap his brain around how a swordsman was pulling this off. He started to wonder if the man-made dungeon was malfunctioning. Maybe I had found some kind of glitch to exploit. He rushed over to the teacher managing the data hub. He pointed at the screen, his voice urgent. He asked if there was a bug in the death trial or if the system was running normally. The teacher checked the logs on his computer and shrugged. He told Chui Shan that everything was perfectly fine. He asked if the display panel was acting up, but Chui Shan just shook his head. He didn't know how to explain what he was seeing. He decided to keep watching. The 7th wave was about to start, and that was where the difficulty spiked. The monsters in the 7th wave were ironclad shamblers, famous for their insane physical defense. Chui Shan didn't believe I could one-shot them like I did the others. Inside the dungeon, I watched the last heavy plate skeleton fall. Suddenly, a warm golden light washed over me. I felt a surge of pure energy. The experience points in this trial were incredible. I had just hit level 15. I felt a rush of excitement. I was finally a level 15 sword immortal. That meant I could finally equip my gold-grade weapon, Azure. The 7th wave was 30 seconds away. I wasted no time. I unequipped the clunky wolf fang blade and pulled Azure from my inventory. The difference was night and day. I felt like I had traded a rusty pipe for a laser cannon. I activated my spirit sword technique. Azure didn't just float, it glided through the air, leaving behind a beautiful trail of blue mist. It was 100 times more elegant than my old blade. It felt smooth, responsive, and terrifyingly powerful. My damage output had just jumped 4 or 5 times higher. I felt like I could take down a level 20 monster in a single heartbeat. The countdown hit 0. 12 summoning circles glowed on the floor. Low, guttural growls echoed through the chamber. There were fewer monsters this time, which meant they were much stronger. I didn't panic. With Azure in my hand, everything was a target. Massive figures, over 2 meters tall, stepped out of the light. They were encased in heavy black armor and carried twin-bladed axes. Every step they took sounded like a hammer hitting an anvil. I scanned their stats. They were ironclad shamblers, level 20 elite monsters. They had massive stamina and a passive skill called Iron Pagoda that cut all incoming physical damage by 40%. They were basically walking tanks. A normal level 20 swordsman or archer wouldn't even be able to scratch them. Only a mage would have a chance. But I wasn't a normal physical dealer. I was a sword immortal. Azure, go, I whispered. I pointed 2 fingers at the nearest armored giant. The blue blade streaked forward, a blur of mist and steel. There was a sharp metallic clang followed by a wet thud. Azure punched straight through the heavy black chest plate and out the other side. Another instant kill. I grinned. The gold-grade weapon was a game-changer. If I were still using the Wolf Fong blade, it would have taken at least 4 hits to crack that armor. Now, it was like cutting through paper. I steered Azure through the air, picking them off one by one. These guys were slow, even slower than the basic skeletons. They were just moving target practice. In less than 2 minutes, all 12 elites were reduced to piles of scrap metal and bone. I took a breath. Only 3 waves left. I remembered the record for this trial was set 2 years ago by a hidden class student who reached the 8th wave. If I cleared the rest, I'd shatter every record in the southern province. I wondered what kind of rewards the school would give me for a perfect run. Then the 8th wave began. My eyes widened. Instead of 12 circles, over 100 summoning circles erupted across the floor. Before the monsters even fully materialized, I heard a swarm of whistling sounds. A cloud of bone arrows blotted out the light, raining down toward me like a plague of locusts. You dirty cowards! I cursed. I didn't stay still this time. I recalled Azure to my hand and bolted backward. I was strong, but I didn't have any defensive skills yet. If I stayed in the open, I'd be turned into a pincushion. My agility was high, but the sheer volume of arrows was too much. One arrow grazed my shoulder, and another bit into my thigh. I hissed in pain, my cool composure slipping for a second. I gripped Azure tight and looked at my new enemies. They were bone archers, level 20. They were only common tier monsters, but there were over 100 of them. They had skills that let their arrows split in midair and fire in rapid bursts. If I hadn't moved fast, I would have been dead before I even saw them. The stinging pain in my leg made my blood boil. I looked at the crowd of archers and felt a surge of cold fury. It was time to stop playing around. I reached out and let out a low grunt as I ripped the bone arrows from my shoulder and thigh. Blood sprayed instantly, soaking into my clothes. I didn't have time to wince. The 100 bone archers were already drawing their bows again, preparing a second volley that would turn this entire room into a graveyard. Against a normal player, 100-to-1 ranged ambush was an impossible puzzle. But they weren't fighting a normal player. They were fighting a sword immortal with a weapon in his hand. The air hummed as 100 bowstrings snapped in unison. Another cloud of arrows blotted out the ceiling, cutting off every possible path of retreat. I didn't even look up. I gripped Azure with one hand and swung it in a wide, violent arc. The blade moved so fast it left a shimmering full-moon trail in the air. This was my second active skill, Evening Sword, Calm Waves. The strike didn't just cut the air, it claimed everything within a 5-meter radius. Even if a heavy armored skeleton had been standing there, it would have been erased instantly. But that was just the beginning. As the skill activated, the water-like ripples on Azure's blade glowed a deep, mystical blue. A massive wave of sword chi erupted from the steel, surging outward like a tidal wave. This was Azure's special effect. It boosted my Calm Wave skill, adding a secondary, tranquil flow that radiated my attack out to 30 meters. It didn't just kill enemies, it functioned as a perfect defense. The The sword chi collided with the incoming rain of arrows. In a split second, the locust swarm of bone projectiles was pulverized into dust. The wave didn't stop there. It slammed into the ranks of the bone archers. They didn't even have time to scream. One by one, their brittle bodies shattered, turning into a white mist of bone fragments. 2 seconds. That was all it took. 100 elite monsters and 100 arrows, all gone. In the history of North Border High School, no one had ever cleared the 8th wave of the death trial. I had just finished it with a single swing. As the dust settled, Azure began to glow with a soft, pulsing mist. The weapon's lifesteal kicked in, funneling 20% of the damage dealt back into me. I felt a cool sensation wash over my body. The holes in my shoulder and thigh closed up instantly. My skin knit back together without leaving a single scar. I was back at full health. I looked at the carpet of crushed bone, then down at my sword. I couldn't help but mutter to myself. It felt like my sword immortal class was actually even more broken when I held the sword instead of flying it. Outside the dungeon, Chui Shan stumbled back 3 steps, a cold sweat breaking across his forehead. A nearby teacher, a level 32 priest, rushed over to support him. She cast 2 clarity spells on him, thinking he was having a heart attack. "Director Chui, are you okay?" she asked, her face full of concern. "Should I take you to the infirmary for a high-level buff?" Chui Shan took a long time to find his breath. He waved her off with a pale hand. "I'm fine. Just go back to work." The teacher hesitated. He didn't look sick. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. She eventually retreated to her desk, leaving him staring at the status panel. "How is this possible?" Chui Shan whispered. To him, the display was a lie. He knew exactly what the 8th wave was. 2 years ago, a genius student with a hidden class, someone who was level 20 before the exams, had tried this trial. That student was the top-ranked kid in the city, a legend in the making. He reached the 8th wave and was instantly killed by the archers. That failure broke his spirit so badly he fell to 12th place in the province. After that, the school stopped using the death trial for training. It became a punishment, a place where no one was expected to survive. And yet, the green dot representing me hadn't just survived. It had stood still while 100 red dots vanished in a heartbeat. Chui Shan felt like he was losing his mind. He wanted to burst into the dungeon just to see how I was doing it. But before he could process the 8th wave, the 9th began. The 9th wave was a nightmare. 10 armored bone shamblers acting as shields for 90 bone archers. It was a perfect combination of offense and defense. The difficulty hadn't just increased, it had doubled. Chui Shan didn't blink. He watched the red dots light up. Then, like a gust of wind blowing out a forest of candles, every single red dot flickered and died. Another one shot. Chui Shan's voice was numb. He honestly wondered if I was using a cheat code. Back inside, I watched the last of the 9th wave crumble. I was starting to realize the versatility of my class. If I threw my sword, I had range and insane single-target lethality. If I held it, I was an untouchable god of area of effect destruction. I had no weaknesses. 1 wave left. The final boss. I kept my grip tight on Azure. I didn't know what was coming next, but I wasn't taking any chances. I was ready to clear this trial once and for all. A notification pinged in my vision. I had a new mission. Actually, my golden finger system was working overtime today, triggering one prompt after another. I checked the panel quickly before the final wave spawned. There were 2 options. Mission 1, clear the death trial. The reward was a skill-blind box, which guaranteed a rare skill book for my specific class. Mission 2, die in the death trial. The reward was a pair of glowing sneakers. I stared at the sneakers for a long moment. I mean, glowing shoes are objectively cool. But I forced myself to look away. A man's happiness might be fleeting, but a rare skill book lasts a lifetime. I chose Mission 1. As soon as I accepted, the countdown hit 0. A massive summoning circle ignited on the ground in front of me. It was 10 meters wide. Whatever was coming out of that hole was going to be significantly bigger than those armored skeletons. It was a single circle, which meant only one thing, a boss. A behemoth stepped out, confirming my fears. It stood nearly 8 meters tall, looking like a giant gorilla clad in thick black plate armor. Black fur sprouted from every gap in the steel, even covering its fanged face. Its arms were grotesquely long and thick. Its left hand braced against the ground, while its right dragged a massive warhammer. The head of that hammer was as big as my entire body. If that thing hit me, there wouldn't be enough left of me to bury. I felt the pressure radiating off it. I focused my eyes, trying to pull up its stat panel. When the screen flickered into existence, I nearly choked. Did the people at North Border High School lose their minds when they bought this dungeon? They expected a weak, helpless, high school senior to fight this nightmare? It was a black-armored ape, a bronze-grade boss. Level 25. Its stats were insane. 125 strength and 113 endurance. It had a passive skill called Iron Armor that reduced all incoming damage by 20%. It had a charge skill that made it immune to crowd control, and a finishing move that dealt 500% damage. To top it off, it could cleanse its own debuffs. In this world, bosses are ranked from Iron to Mythic. A bronze boss usually requires a full, elite 5-man team of the same level to take down. The average high school senior is level 12. Even the teachers are only around level 30. Asking a student to kill this thing was like asking a shrimp to assassinate a whale. This was the true meaning of a death trial. You weren't supposed to leave alive. The pressure was heavy, but the thought of that rare skill book kept my heart steady. Besides, one-shotting everything with a single arrow was starting to get boring. The ape didn't have any ranged attacks. It let out a deafening roar that shook the arena, hoisted its hammer, and charged. I narrowed my eyes, calculating the distance. Its agility was higher than mine, meaning it was faster. I couldn't let it get close. One hit, and I was dead. This was going to be a game of kite or die. Go, I whispered, flicking my wrist. Azure shot forward. I retreated instantly, putting as much space between us as possible. I had to play this like an archer, chipping away at its health from a distance. Compared to the massive ape, Azure looked like a toothpick. It was hard to imagine it doing any real damage. But when the sword struck, the impact was terrifying. The giant was actually knocked back a step. Its black armor shattered like glass hit by a bullet, spiderwebbing outward. I could break its defense. The ape grew feral. It swatted at Azure with its massive left hand like it was chasing a fly. But under my control, the sword danced through the air, weaving around its thick fingers and carving deep gashes into its hide. Azure's first passive triggered. The ape's movement speed plummeted by 35%. It realized it couldn't catch the fly, so it tried to lunge at me instead. But with the slow effect, its speed dropped until we were roughly equal. I didn't need to stand still to control the sword. I moved in a wide circle, kiting the beast effortlessly. 2 minutes passed. The ape was covered in bleeding wounds, and it hadn't even touched a thread of my clothes. I thought I had it won. Then, the beast stopped. A low, guttural growl vibrated in its throat. A crimson aura suddenly exploded around its body. It lowered its shoulder and lunged. It started slow, but it was accelerating rapidly, closing the gap in seconds. It was using its charge skill. I didn't hesitate. I recalled Azure to my side and sprinted, trying to bank hard to the left to get out of its path. I wanted to curse. The skill was called Straight Charge, but the damn thing was steering. It followed my movement, correcting its path with heavy, thudding steps. I ran out of room. I was backed into a corner of the dungeon map. The ape slammed into me like a freight train. The impact sent me flying backward. My chest burned, and my breath hitched. Luckily, the initial hit was mostly knockback and didn't do massive damage. I survived the collision, but I was dazed. The ape skidded to a halt, the red aura fading. It didn't give me a second to breathe. Using the momentum from the charge, it swung that house-sized hammer in a massive, overhead arc. It was coming right for my head. That falling heavy hammer was a different story. I couldn't just shrug it off. It carried 500% damage. If a guy like Lu Sheng stood there, 10 of him would be flattened into a pancake in one hit. I felt the crushing pressure as the shadow of the hammer loomed over me. But right then, Azure finally flew back into my hand. The moment my fingers gripped the hilt, my skill, Evening Sword Calm, lit up. It was ready. I swung the blade in a wide arc. A brilliant, full moon sword light exploded between us. Clang. The sound of metal clashing was deafening. It vibrated deep in my chest and made my eardrums ache. The Evening Sword Calm didn't just deal damage. It had a domineering effect that neutralized enemy attacks and skills. The hammer was forced back, the massive blow completely parried. I didn't stop there. As the sword light faded, a wave of sword energy rippled outward, slashing right across the ape's armored belly. The strike was powerful. It tore a deep gash through the metal plating, and thick, dark red blood sprayed out instantly. The ape roared in pain and stumbled back 2 steps. I didn't waste the opening. I bolted past its side, escaping the corner and finding open ground. As I ran, I used my sword control technique again, sending Asura to bite into its flesh once more. The slow effect was back on. Even a boss has limits. Its charge skill couldn't be used back-to-back. Now that I had space, I wasn't worried about being trapped again. The ape swiped at the air, frustrated as I slipped away like an eel. It let out a series of guttural roars, and a sudden red light flared from its body. My slow debuff vanished instantly. It was using a war cry. It was a skill designed to cleanse debuffs, so it wouldn't get kite to death. Too bad for him. I didn't rely on long cooldown skills to slow him down. I used basic attacks. Before the red glow even faded, I slashed him again. The slow effect snapped right back onto his status bar. The ape looked like it was going to explode from pure rage. 2 thick plumes of white steam shot from its nostrils. It swung the hammer, desperate to turn me into a pulp, but my movement speed was now equal to its own. It couldn't catch me. Eventually, it tried to charge again. This time, I had experience. I didn't even bother dodging. I recalled Asura, braced for the impact, and took the hit head-on. Then, I repeated the process, using Evening Sword Calm to break its hammer strike before casually walking away. Taking the charge hit hurt, sure. But every time I landed a hit with Asura, the lifesteal kicked in. My health bar stayed topped off the entire time. I was in perfect condition. Finally, after its 3rd charge, I broke its stance one last time. My blade cut deep. The ape, covered in wounds and broken armor, let out one final, unwilling groan. Its massive body collapsed, sending a cloud of dust into the air. The level 25 bronze boss was dead. A massive wave of experience flooded into my bar. Gold light swirled around me. I hit level 16. The corpse began to dissipate, leaving behind a glowing teleportation array. I was proud of myself for soloing a boss of this caliber, but as I looked at the empty ground, I felt a pang of disappointment. Usually, bosses in the wild or in hidden realms dropped piles of loot. Since this was a man-made trial dungeon, it didn't seem to have that feature. If it did, a purple grade item would have been a fair reward. Then I remembered, I still had a quest reward waiting. I pulled up my task panel and clicked complete. Immediately, a skill blind box appeared in my inventory. I didn't hesitate, I opened it. The box shattered into fragments of light. Icons of different skills flickered rapidly before my eyes, too fast to track. They were all sword-related, and every single one looked incredibly flashy. Finally, the light settled into a single purple skill book. I checked the stats and nearly shouted for joy. It was exactly what I needed. The skill was called Drunken Moon Steps. It was a special movement skill for the Sword Immortal class. When activated, it boosted movement speed by 300% and created afterimages. Most importantly, it gave a 99% chance to dodge any non-continuous area of effect attack. In this world, Wind Mages had a speed buff that only gave a 100% boost for 10 seconds. My new skill was 3 times faster and had no duration limit. As long as I had the stamina, I could keep it active. The 99% dodge rate was the real game changer. It was basically invincibility. If I'd had this during the fight with the ape, it wouldn't have even touched my clothes. Even its final hammer strike would have just passed through my afterimage. I learned the skill immediately. The book turned into a streak of light and merged into my body. I felt unstoppable. I had a long-range kill move, a melee parry, an area of effect strike, and now, god-tier speed and evasion. I was a one-man army. Satisfied, I stepped into the center of the teleportation array. The world blurred as the familiar pulling sensation took hold, and I prepared to leave the dungeon behind. The world blurred, and a second later, I was standing back in the teleportation hall. Shan was still there, waiting. His expression was a mess of conflicting emotions. He was trying his best to look like the stern dean I knew, but he couldn't hide the signs of a man who had just seen a ghost. His forehead was slick with sweat, and his face was unnervingly pale. He had clearly seen something through the monitoring system that shook him to his core. I felt his gaze on me, but I didn't let it bother me. "Dean Shui," I said, breaking the silence. "I've finished the death trial. I assume my punishment is over." Chui Shan took a deep breath, trying to regain his composure. He stroked his chin and nodded slowly. "Since you made it out of the death trial?" "Yes, the punishment is over." He paused, his eyes searching mine. He looked like he wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but didn't know where to start. Finally, he spoke with a hesitant tone. "But Lin Yuan, did you actually clear the dungeon? As in, you stayed until the very end?" "Yeah," I replied naturally. "I was teleported back automatically after I cleared it." Chui Shan stiffened. He stared at me for a long time. You aren't lying to me, are you? You should know that no student has ever cleared the death trial before. Tell me the truth. How exactly did you get through it?" I opened my mouth to tell him it was simple. I just killed everything that moved, but the teleportation gate behind me rippled again. A small, delicate figure was ejected from the portal. It was Chiyohi. She hadn't cleared the trial. She had been killed by the third wave of monsters and forcibly kicked out. She looked like a wreck. Her face was deathly pale, and her legs were shaking so hard she could barely stand. She stumbled toward me, reaching out as if expecting me to catch her. I didn't move. In fact, I took a half step back. I wasn't about to get dragged into her drama again, especially not with the dean watching. Thud. Chiyohi hit the floor hard. The phantom pain of being torn apart by monsters combined with the impact of the fall was too much for her. She curled up on the ground and started sobbing. Chui Shan frowned. "Death in the trial isn't real. There's no reason to cry. You're a professional now. If you're this scared of a simulation, how will you ever hunt real monsters or defend against the darkness?" His harsh words forced Chiyohi to try and stand, but her legs were like wet noodles. She struggled for a moment before collapsing back down, tears streaming down her face. Dean Shui, I can't stand up," she whimpered. The bone shamblers were too terrifying. There were so many of them. Once they surrounded me, I couldn't escape. I couldn't help myself. Terrifying? Those things were basically one-shot fodder. I shrugged. The only things in there that were actually annoying were the skeleton archers. If you aren't prepared for their volleys, they can be a bit tricky to dodge. Chiyohi looked up at me, her eyes wide and confused. "Skeleton archers? What are you talking about?" I raised an eyebrow. "You don't know? Oh, right. They don't show up until the 7th wave. You probably died during the 3rd wave, so it makes sense you never saw them." Chiyohi went silent. She looked like I had just slapped her. Even Chui Shan looked at me with a strange expression. I think he was wondering if he needed to enroll me in a social skills class. He had paired me with Chiyohi to warn me about the distractions of pretty girls, but looking at me now, that clearly wasn't a problem. I was more interested in monster spawn rates than her feelings. Seeing that Chiyohi was about to burst into a fresh round of tears, Chui Shan waved his hand dismissively. "Fine. The punishment is over. You two can go. I hope this trial served as a wake-up call. You have 100 days until the exams. Focus on that, not on other things." I nodded and turned to leave. "Lin Yuan, wait," Chui Shan called out. I stopped. "Tomorrow, the senior class is heading to the wilderness for level grinding. This trip is different from the previous ones. Don't be lazy." He lowered his voice, his tone turning serious. "The school has big ambitions this year. We want to produce a top-ranked student for the entire northern province." My eyes lit up. I wasn't an idiot. Chui Shan hadn't given me a reward for clearing the trial, but this was his way of acknowledging my strength. He was telling me that tomorrow was my chance to shine. "I understand," I said with a small smile. "Thanks, Dean." I walked out of the hall, leaving a sobbing Chiyohi behind. Chui Shan sighed and called for a teacher to carry her to the infirmary. The next morning, I arrived at class on time. I sat down at my desk, but I couldn't even see the wood. It was buried under a mountain of breakfast sets, steamed buns, soy milk, pastries, all decorated with pink sticky notes covered in elegant handwriting. I sighed and reached into the desk drawer. I pulled out a thick stack of love letters. I scooped up the entire pile of food and letters in one go. Whoa. Let me handle that. My friend, nicknamed Dog Sheng, was already waiting. He grinned and took the pile from my arms. Don't let it go to waste. I'll take care of the disposal as usual. Dog Sheng was built like a bear, and I'm pretty sure half his muscle mass came from eating the breakfast girls gave to me. I never touched them. I didn't want to owe anyone anything, but I hated wasting food. Dog Sheng was the perfect solution. As he started digging into a meat bun, I reached back into the depths of my desk. I pulled out another stack of letters. My brow furrowed. There were way more than usual. What's the deal? I asked. Why are there so many today? Dog Sheng talked through a mouthful of food. You don't know? Man, the school forums are blowing up. Everyone knows you rejected the school goddess yesterday. From the freshmen to the seniors, you're the main topic. So, shouldn't that make them stay away? Dog Sheng looked at me like I was the dumb one. Think about it, Lin brother. You rejected Xiaohe. That proves you aren't into her. And if you aren't into the top girl, it means every other girl thinks she has a shot. As long as you're single, you're fair game. Even if you weren't, some of them would still try. I stayed silent, watching him chug a carton of milk. The logic was exhausting. I just wanted to get to the wilderness and start swinging my sword. Dog Sheng unwrapped a beautifully packaged sandwich and kept talking. I'm telling you, Brother Lin, you really shouldn't have rejected my goddess yesterday. If you'd just stayed with her, you wouldn't have all this trouble. You'd stop getting love letters, and I'd get to see her every day. He smiled happily, looking incredibly satisfied with his own twisted logic. I stared at him, my expression hard to describe. Listen to yourself. Are you even human? Brother Lin, you don't understand. Dog Sheng sighed deeply. My love for Xiaohe is true. As long as my goddess is happy, I'm happy. My entire worldview felt like it was flipping upside down. Don't call me brother anymore. You're the big brother here. I could never reach your level of enlightenment if I had 100 lifetimes. Dog Sheng didn't catch the sarcasm. He looked smug. That's why you need to learn from me. Someone like you, buried in love letters and blocked by girls every day, you only feel the burden. But me? I watched Xiaohe be happy, and I taste the sweetness of love. Go taste it by yourself then. Stop disgusting me. My skin was crawling. I couldn't take it anymore and pulled my seat as far away from him as possible. But Dog Sheng leaned back in, his face turning serious. Wait, don't go yet. I just remembered something I forgot to tell you. What is it? Speak fast, I said, wanting him to shut up before he permanently damaged my brain. He put down his breakfast and pulled out his phone, scrolling through it. This is actually pretty messy. There are a lot of people in school looking to teach you a lesson. You remember how old Chui took you and my goddess away yesterday? Well, last night, she posted on her friend circle. Look at this. He handed me the phone. I saw a post from Xiaohe. Asterisk, I finally found the courage to be brave once, but my heart was completely broken. Maybe I'm just not good enough for him. Asterisk. The photo was taken from a bed in the school infirmary. It showed a white ceiling and an IV bag half drained. In the corner, you could see her pale, slender hand with a needle stuck in it. A wave of nausea hit me. My toes literally curled in my shoes from the cringe. Get this filth away from me. I turned my head, fighting the urge to hit something, and handed the phone back. But Dog Sheng shoved the screen right back in my face. Brother Lin, you missed the important part. What am I supposed to see? More tea-scented melodrama? Or the pack of simps in the comments asking if she's okay? The comments, obviously, Dog Sheng said. You might not know this, but my goddess has a lot of pursuers. Besides me, there's one guy who's been chasing her for 2 years. You've probably heard of him, Li Zai. I thought for a second. The name rang a bell. Class 9's monitor? The hidden class user? That's him, Dog Sheng nodded. Li Zai is a shadow archer. He's consistently ranked in the top 10 of our senior year. He's a real contender for the top scholar title. He's obsessed with Xiaohe. I heard he's fought multiple people because of her. With his class advantage, he's sent guys to the hospital for days. He pointed to a specific comment. Yesterday, when Xiaohe confessed to you in public, I knew he'd target you. I saw his comment on her post last night. It's aggressive. I forced myself to look. The username was where to go. The comment read, Lin Yuan, if you break her wings, I will destroy your paradise. My eyes. My freaking eyes. I literally threw Dog Sheng's phone away. Hey, what are you doing? Dog Sheng scrambled to pick it up, checking for cracks. I'm trying to warn you. It was a reflex. If that phone had stayed in front of me for one more second, I would have drawn my sword and sliced it in half. If you ever show me something like that again, I hissed through my teeth, I'll destroy you first. I took a breath, still annoyed. Actually, Li Zai and Xiao He are a perfect match. That cringy caption is legendary. I'm glad I don't have them on social media, or I'd be blind by now. Dog Sheng didn't like me saying they were a match, but seeing how much physical pain the cringe had caused me, he didn't argue. He just lowered his voice. Brother Lin, seriously, be careful. This is leveling week. If that kid takes a shot at you in the wilderness, it'll be bad. He's famous for firing black arrows at people who bothered Xiao He. I knew he meant well. I waved him off. Fine, I got it. In the past, I might have been worried. Even with high stats, I was just a basic combat class. I usually ranked around 30 in the grade, 15 at best. Li Zai was definitely stronger then. But now, I was a hidden class user too. The only one. If he wanted to destroy my paradise, I wasn't sure about that, but I was definitely going to break his legs. As the morning went on, the classroom filled up. It was noisy until our homeroom teacher, Li Qing, walked in. She was in her 30s, had short hair, and was incredibly sharp. She was strict but cared about us, so everyone respected her. Today, she wasn't in her usual work clothes. She was wearing tight leather ranger armor. It was a silent reminder. This was leveling week. We were going into the wild to kill. She clapped her hands. Is everyone here? Before we head to the teleportation hall, I have something to distribute. Monitor, academic rep, come here and pass these out. She pulled several boxes from her inventory. Inside were small crystal balls, about the size of a fist. Everyone looked confused. Usually, we just hit the teleportation array and left. We never got items before. I realized old Shui wasn't kidding yesterday when he told me not to slack off. This leveling week was going to be different. As soon as the crystal ball hit my hand, I checked its stats. Soul Collector. Alchemy item. Requirement. None. Function. Collects the souls of slain beasts and converts them into points. The stronger the beast, the more points. Current points, 0. Description, a casual creation by an alchemist. It collects souls, though the souls themselves are actually quite useless. A small girl in the front row raised her hand. Teacher, what is this soul collector for? We've never used these before. Li Qing looked at us and replied, its purpose is simple. It's to record the number of beasts you kill while leveling up, Li Qing explained. She paused for a moment, her voice dropping an octave as if sharing a secret. Listen, work hard out there this week. And don't forget to use those soul collectors to bring back every single soul you take. She looked at us with a serious expression. One more thing. The souls in those collectors can be transferred. That means they can be stolen. Protect yourselves, and don't let anyone take what you've worked for. Before anyone could ask questions, she hurried out of the classroom as if she were hiding something. We were all left scratching our heads. I figured the school was probably just trying to gather weird materials for their resident alchemists. It wouldn't be the first time. I tucked the soul collector into my inventory and headed for the teleportation hall. The place was packed with high school seniors. In this world, our schedule was simple: 1 week of books, 1 week of killing. Freshmen had teachers to hold their hands, but as seniors, we were on our own. I saw my old friend Chen Wei. Everyone called him Dog Victory, hooking up with his usual group. He was a tank, so he always had a spot in a team. I used to party up with him, but since my stats were balanced enough to handle hits and dish them out, I'd been flying solo for a while. When it was my turn at the teleportation array, I didn't hesitate. I selected the highest level map available, the Ghost Shadow Woods. It used to be a struggle to solo this place, but now that I was a sword immortal, it was just another day at the office. The familiar, gut-wrenching tug of the teleportation array hit me. A moment later, I was standing in a forest choked with thick, gray mist. Visibility was terrible. The trees looked like twisted willows, their branches swaying like the long, thin limbs of ghosts. I started at the safety zone, a small clearing established by the school. There were a few tents and some teachers on guard. As long as you stayed within their sight, you were safe. They also provided supplies. I stocked up on water and food, shoving it all into my inventory. I looked around. Not many people chose this map. Most were in groups of 3 or 5. I caught a glimpse of a high-level hidden class user leaving the zone quickly, but I couldn't tell if he was solo like me. I didn't care. I picked a direction and walked into the fog. Soon, the safety zone vanished behind me. The only sounds were the whistling wind and the eerie creak of branches rubbing together. I was completely alone. Suddenly, my instincts flared. I whipped Azure out of my inventory and used my sword kinesis. The blade streaked forward like a bolt of blue lightning. 15 meters ahead, a tree trunk that had been slowly shifting was impaled. A horrific, ghostly shriek ripped through the air. An agonizing face appeared on the bark, hollow eyes glowing with a faint light and a jagged, wooden maw twisted in pain. It was a bloodthirsty willow. Level 20. These things were the signature monsters of this forest. They had high health and a nasty passive that healed 10% of their missing HP every second. If they caught you with their entangle skill, they'd use bloodsuck to drain you dry like a human juice box. Most people at my level couldn't out-damage their healing. But this one was stupid. It had been wandering around with its pathetic agility, basically begging to be noticed. Azure didn't just wound it. The sword tore a massive hole straight through its trunk. Yellowed leaves exploded from its canopy as the entire tree shriveled up and died instantly. If Azure could one-shot an ironclad zombie, this overgrown weed stood no chance. I walked over and held the soul collector near the remains. The tree's corpse dissolved into ash and swirled into the crystal ball. Current points, 20. Not a bad start. I tucked the ball away, ready to find more, when my system interface flickered to life. New task available. Option 1. Kill 200 bloodthirsty willows. Reward, Plant Slayer, Title Badge, Purple Grade. Stats, plus 10 to all attributes, plus 10% damage to wood-type monsters. Option 2. Kill 10 bloodthirsty willows. I looked at the rewards and smiled. It looked like I was going to be busy.